Do Black Lives matter? The answer is yes, but every other life matters as well. Today, I would like to show you how the Black Lives Matter organization and movement discredits the value of other lives and how it affects the police departments and our country. Especially in today's world, it seems like everybody is pinning against each other when facing different views. I am here to bring a Christian aspect of what the world needs and why. First, I would like to discuss why I believe all lives matter, but before we get into that, I will give a little background information on the Black Lives organization. The movement described their motto as fighting for freedom, liberation, and justice. If you Google the description of the organization, it will pop up as a decentralized political and social movement advocating for nonviolent civil disobedience and protest against incidents of police brutality and all racial motivated violence against Black people. The movement was founded in 2013 and it has erupted in recent years due to the fact of George Floyd's death. Today I would like to show you how the Black Lives Matter organization and movement discredits the value of other lives and how it affects the police department and the country. Dr. Smith touched up on this subject a few weeks ago in one of my courses, and he brought to my attention that all lives matter and all races matter. Why? First, it is taken straight out of the Bible. If you look closely, the Bible mentioned no color of skin or what they looked like, no features. But instead, it highlighted and pointed out that they were handcrafted by God. In Genesis 1:27, it says, "So God created man in his own image. In the image of God he created them, male and female he created them." The word all includes every race, ethnicity, which includes minority, and every background you can think of. All lives matter should not take away from the fact that there is still racism and inequality within our country, but instead it should be used to recognize our differences and unite in those differences to become a better society. Riots have broken out after the death of George Floyd. Floyd died due to a police officer kneeling on the back of his neck for a few minutes. Now, I believe that police officer was breaking protocol for dealing with somebody who was resisting arrest. But because of this death, riots broke out throughout the country. Businesses were broken into, fires were started, and it turned into Black Lives Movement against the police. Multiple cities were burned and destroyed. But I find it ironic that in their motto, it says that they endorse nonviolent protests. Now, this does not mean that all protests turn violent, just like how all police aren't bad. But because of this outbreak, it has caused even more division within our country. And because of this, it has become a canceled culture. People are offended by everything, including maple syrup, a cartoon dog, etc. The extreme riots have destroyed Lincoln Memorial, which is also ironic because Abraham Lincoln fought to abolish slavery and unite the country. It is like our country is trying to erase our history. One of the extreme rioter groups is called Antifa. ADL described Antifa as this: Antifa is not a unified group. It is a loose collection of local, regional groups and individuals. Their presence at a protest is intended to intimidate and disarray racists, but the use of violent measures by some Antifa against their adversaries can create a vicious, self-defeating cycle of attacks, counterattacks, and blame. This is why most established civil rights organizations criticize Antifa tactics as dangerous and counterproductive. Statistics show that 1,468 white citizens have been killed by the police within the past 3 years, in comparison to 790 black citizens who have been killed. 2020 is actually on track to have a lower death rate than all 3 years. If the Black Lives Movement wants to defund the police and substitute officers with more psychological therapists and peacemakers, I believe it will have the opposite effect on the crime rates. I believe crime rates will rise because, for one, criminals will still be criminals with less supervision. And two, because of less supervision, more people feel like it is okay to get away with small crimes, which lead into bigger crimes. Take, for example, the riots that happened this past summer. Hundreds of people got away with breaking the law due to the fact of having less police officers to enforce rules, and because it was fighting violence with violence. There is no peace within that. It comes down to a sin issue within the world. So one might counteract this argument and say, well, if you're saying all this and believe it, then you must be a white supremacist and you are a racist. Now, with all this being said, I believe there needs to be more training done for police officers before they can go out into the field. I also believe providing more psychological programs would be beneficial for criminals who are willing to turn their lives around. And I also believe that Black Lives Matter, but I stand on the basis that all lives matter because that is what God has told us in His Word. So in a rebuttal to that statement, I would say, no, I am not a white supremacist, because you can take a look at my background and how I was raised, and I believe everybody has an opportunity to strive to be their best selves, and that God has a plan for everyone. I'm not a racist just because I believe all lives matter. The key word there is all. That includes Black lives. I do not think it is right for a race to be superior over another race. That is why I argue my statement of all lives matter with God's word about what He says about lives, especially unborn lives, but that is another topic. And what statistics show, I believe. In conclusion, Black Lives Matter organization and movement discredits the value of other lives and how it affects the police and the country. I believe that all lives matter because of what the Bible teaches about His creation. Defunding the police will only create more division among the country. If people adopted the core values of the Bible and strive to believe that they are fearfully and wonderfully made, the world would be a better place. But unfortunately, we live in a fallen world. And you can see that in the sin that goes on in today's generation and throughout all generations. So the question I ask today is, do Black lives matter? Yes, absolutely. As Martin Luther King Jr. said, I refuse to accept the view that mankind is so tragically bound to the starless midnight of racism and war, the bright daybreak of peace and brotherhood can never become a reality. I believe that unarmed truth and unconditional love will have the final word. And as a Christian, I believe that God will have the final word.